Hello, everybody. My name is Toohill. I was the class of 2014, and as you can tell, a Notre Dame kid from the very beginning. This was me at maybe about 9 months old, and I think I peaked at 9 months. It's been downhill ever since then. So I grew up in San Diego. Amazing family. My mom had come here for undergrad. My mom and dad had both come here for law school. My older sister had come here as well. I was class of 2014. My little brother was the slacker of the family, so he played football at Stanford instead. And when I came here to Notre Dame, I spent the better part of my first couple years in college working on a sort of a student project. It was sort of a startup, but it wasn't really a company. It was just sort of something that a group of us came together and started building. And so we started this platform that was called Next Gen Journal. It was like if you remember the Huffington Post back in the day, it was sort of like a college version of that. So we had writers at all these different colleges around the country, and they would write about the news and global affairs and sports and things like that. And we did this for a couple years and got to have some amazing experiences of building a team and working to develop a product. And I sort of realized in the process that this wasn't the thing I wanted to do, but that entrepreneurship was something that was really, really compelling to me. And I had a feeling it would be central to the work I would do for the rest of my life. So did that the first couple years, and then as it came towards the end of junior year, and particularly senior year, I was really starting to think about what was next, and what I wanted my life more broadly to be about. And I started having these conversations with this guy named Matt Bloom, who's a professor in the Mendoza College of Business, and Father Dan Grudy, who's a Catholic priest. And Matt was thinking about these topics of well-being and spirituality through the lens of social science, and Father Grudy was thinking about them through the lens of faith. And those conversations we were having turned into a discussion group with a bunch of friends, including Kristen Pacifico, who's here today. And then by the spring semester, we had started a new class that was called The Heart's Desire and Social Change that explored these topics with a group of about 20 to 25 students. And it was really at that time that I started to fall in love with this material, topics related to the lives we live and the relationships we build. And at the same time, I'd also fallen in love with this little school in Johannesburg, South Africa. So as I stepped away from the experience at Next Gen Journal, I got really interested in the world of social entrepreneurship, entrepreneurs working for social justice causes. And I kept hearing about this international school outside of Johannesburg, a place called the African Leadership Academy, that had the mission to develop the next generation of African leaders. And so they would bring in top students from all over the continent. They would go to the school for 2 years, and then they would come to places like Notre Dame. And when I was a senior, I visited, and of these 5 students, sorry, I can't count, it's been a long time, of the 7 students shown in this picture, I believe 5 of them now have degrees from the University of Notre Dame. And so as they came here, I ended up going out there. And after I graduated in 2014, I took a fellowship to work in Johannesburg at African Leadership Academy. And once I got there, I traveled around for a little bit. This was a picture that was taken on Table Mountain in Cape Town. And it was a very foggy day as I stood on some ledge that was probably irresponsible looking back and looked off in the distance, and a friend took this photo. And I love this picture looking back because it reminds me of what that time was for me. When I moved to South Africa, for the first 6 months I was there, I really struggled. I fell into this spell of anxiety, which is probably not an uncommon experience in our generation. And it was something I'd never experienced before and didn't really know what to do with. I was just sort of in this fog. I was in a new place. I didn't know anyone. It was very unfamiliar. And so over the course of time, what happened is I found tools for myself. I started to meditate. I turned to contemplative prayer. I started to journal. I started doing different exercises or activities in the relationships that I was in. And what I found was that these tools or practices or rituals were incredibly important in my own life in helping me work through the challenges I was facing to my well-being. And what was exciting was for the 3 years I was there, I was at this amazing school surrounded by these incredible students from all over, like John Lewis from Nigeria, Camille Kamor, from North Africa. And what I realized in that time was that everyone had challenges that they were facing in their own lives. And they might have been distinct from mine, but every person in that community had something that they had been, or currently were, or would be working through in the future. And I realized the same tools that I had found so useful in my life were really useful to a lot of people in this community as well. And so after 3 years, I wrapped up my time at African Leadership Academy, and I was ready for the next thing. And I knew that was going to involve a move back to the US. But before I did, I got the chance again to travel around a little bit, make the most of this experience. And I love this picture because it was also a friend took this, and it was sort of the other side of the coin to the picture I showed of when I started, where I was surrounded by the fog on Table Mountain in Cape Town. Here I have, I don't know if you can see it with the lighting, but a massive smile on my face at the top of Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. And it was sort of just a reminder of the experience that I had worked through and where I had come out on the other side, again, learning a lot about myself and what I wanted to do in the process. So I came back, and I actually moved back to South Bend. And if you remember that professor that I had started the class with back in 2014, since I had left, he'd been doing some really interesting work. He'd started to get all this academic research funding to study well-being. And he had built up this expertise around what well-being is, all the dimensions of our mental, emotional, spiritual, social health, as well as the wide range of practices that can help different people with different dimensions of their well-being. And if I were to summarize it, fundamentally what his research came down to is just that there's no silver bullet. Different practices, different tools work for different people based on what their needs are, who they are, and what they believe. And Matt and I decided to work together to start to bring those practices to more people at a time when we thought challenges to well-being were only on the rise. And what had been really exciting was tools had started to emerge really over the past, at this point, 5 to 10 years. And the first wave of this were meditation apps. You might have tried an app like Headspace or Calm that it's in your pocket, it helps you meditate in a really easy, seamless manner. And more recently, there had been a lot of derivatives of that model. A couple of Notre Dame guys actually launched an amazing app for Catholic prayer called Hallow. There are another 3 apps for Christian prayer: Glorify, Pray, Abide. There's a couple for journaling. There's a couple more for your relationships. There's a different one, though, if you go through a breakup. So on top of how hard breakups can be, you need a new app on top of that as well. And we looked at this, and we were really excited to see these resources emerging and sort of expanding the surface area of tools that people would use. But it also just struck us that it wasn't the most useful model to the everyday person if you had to go to a new place for a new solution with a new subscription every time. And the parallel we've often used is, imagine if to listen to music, you had to download one app with one subscription for hip hop, but then a different one, a new app with a new subscription for pop music, a different one for country music, a different one for gospel. Of course you don't. You go to a platform like Spotify and it helps you find what works for you. And ultimately, we believe that's the sort of solution that is going to benefit the most people with respect to well-being. And it's what we're building at the company and social enterprise we're building now, Ritual. And the way we do this is we partner with different thought leaders, some of the most amazing people we've gotten the chance to know: theologians, academics, authors, major cultural figures who have wisdom to share related to well-being. And we work with them to build their wisdom into our platform, and then as people come in, help people find the path, the tools that work for them. And I'll wrap up here. I live now in New York City. A friend of mine took this picture at the start of the year, and I loved it because it was sort of a classic New York. This is the West Village where I live. You can see the fire escapes and everything coming through. And it's often been a source of inspiration for me on this journey to just walk around New York City, a city of 8 million people, a very diverse city of 8 million people. And to think about the fact that every person in that city has well-being needs that they face. They'll have challenges that they encounter. And a lot of our work, a lot of what I think of as my life's work, is to help those people find tools that will be helpful to them, just as I found tools that were helpful for myself during my time in South Africa. And a lot of that journey really had its origins here at Notre Dame. And so it's really wonderful to be back with this group and celebrate that journey. Thank you.